bonsai is unique, and this lovely little Chinese juniper caught my eye. It needed some pruning and a little bit of thinning out and a bit of styling. But as I was looking through it, I saw something that kind of stood out. I thought, oh, that looks really lovely. I always try to keep an open mind when I'm styling bonsai, and just go with the flow, really, see where the trunk takes me. And so I started off just thinning out, taking out some of the small shoots that are sort of growing from the main trunk line, having a good look inside, making sure that I'm happy with what I'm about to do. Pick up the knife, make sure it's nice and sharp and clean, and then figure out how I'm going to make the first cut. And also trying to make sure that I don't slice my finger off in the process, so making sure that I can support the tree and keep my fingers out of the way. I have cut myself far too many times over the years, and so that's something I try to prevent. Once I've made the cuts that I need to do, then I can start to strip off some of the bark from unwanted branches. Now, this is a ginning process, and so I've cut the bark so it doesn't peel down the trunk and separated it from the branch from the tree, as it were. So I can now just squash the bark around this branch and start to peel it off. As you can see here now, there's quite a lot of space in this part of the bonsai. And just go back and trim off any sort of long, hairy bits. I'm not going to do too much shaping to the gin itself at the moment because I've got a lot more work to do. Just make sure it's nice and clean. And gradually this is a process that I will just carry on. Bit more work to do down here now. So I have done all the cuts that I need to do. Sometimes I need to go back and just make sure that the cuts are nice and clean. So as I'm peeling off the bark, it doesn't rip off bits of bark that I don't want to be removed. Work my way all the way along this sort of foliage bit here, just squashing, and it separates the bark and the cambium layer from the sapwood and the wood beneath. So I'm not crushing it, so I'm breaking off the wood itself, just literally separating the foliage from the branch. And that allows me just to literally just kind of strip off the bark, using the pliers here just to pull off the ends so that I don't get any cut ends on this bit here. So it's almost like it's broken. The whole idea of this is to make the tree look weathered, and so I want it to look a little bit rugged on the ends of the branches. Not paying too much attention to the very ends because we'll tidy those up a bit later on. You can see the gins stand out quite well now. A little bit more cutting to do here as I work my way around the tree. And every time I go from branch to branch, I'm always re-evaluating, making sure that the process is going to plan. Also, when you're doing something like this, make sure that you are doing it for the right reasons. And by that I mean that you're not just jinning and shariing for the sake of doing it. I've seen so many people just do it for the sake of it and end up with a tree which looks a bit odd at the end of it. Every jin and shari tells a story, and we have to make sure that that story fits in with the rest of the tree. And make sure that it's going to make the bonsai look old and rugged, but also give the viewer the reason so that you can look at it and think, ah, yes, I can see why that's happened. So make sure that you're doing it for the right purposes. Just shaving off a little bit here, thinning out a little bit, and making sure it's a little bit pointy. There are lots of different reasons for dead wood in a bonsai. If you think about real trees, there are many reasons why you'd have dead branches, maybe just snapped off in a strong wind, or maybe just weathered over a period of years and years and years. So the shape of the shari and the jin needs to mimic the reason for why this has happened. We can always learn an awful lot by looking at the trees out in the wild. You can see fairly young trees with quite rugged jins and sharis that are just in areas of constant wind and battering, and you can then see really old trees that have just given up, parts of the branches, heavy branches are given up over a period of hundreds of years, and they just get a bit saggy, and then the odd gust just finishes them off and they snap off and gradually die off as the rest of the tree grows around it. So try to think about what it is that you are trying to achieve when styling a bonsai like this. So you can probably see now what we're kind of aiming for, what I was aiming for when I started this. And the reason why I liked this design, this shape, this feeling in this little chap, is because the trunk line here, it kind of just winded its way up and over to one side. And I thought, that's lovely. I'm going to go with that. Plenty of branches on one side, with only a couple of branches on the other side, on the opposite side. And that one main bottom jin there, which just lended itself to a bit of a shari and a jin, I thought was lovely. And that's why I went with this kind of design. Now it's just a question of wiring the branches and shaping them to put some shape in the main branches so that we can kind of get that windswept look. And it follows from the very tip of the bottom jin all the way through the tree, out through the branches and the leaves. I'm kind of aiming to get the effect of that when we look at this bonsai, we can almost feel the wind blowing through it, a bit like a flag fluttering in the wind. We only have to look at a video of a flag blowing in the wind, and that's when we think, oh, it's windy, even though we can't feel the wind. The wiring gets a little bit fiddly as we move up the trunk line. Lots of small twigs and branches here to sort of try and get the wire around, but we get there. My fingers definitely aren't as sort of agile as they were sort of 20 odd years ago, 30, 40 years ago when I first started bonsai. So not quite as, don't quite have the finesse I used to have with my wiring. But anyway, still love it. So we're nearly at the top now and trying to make sure that all the branches are flowing in the right direction. And of course, don't forget the jins, because we can wire those jins as well and put a little bit of shape into those. And do it while the sapwood is still nice and wet, full of sap, and they should dry in the position that you want them to. Probably take a month or two, and then they should stay where you need them to be. So put a little bit of shape into those as well. Now it's just a little bit of tweaking here. Go back through the jins and sort of tidy those up, and a little bit of a brush with a wire brush here, clean off any bits of bark or cambium layer and a bit of sappy wood there that's all peeling off. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Give it a once over, a little bit of pinching out on some of the ends of the foliage here. On to the roots. Let's take it out of this pot now and have a look and see what's going on down there. Just separate the root ball from the pot, work your way around, and then just gradually leave the root ball out, trying obviously not to disturb the branches that I've just wired. Tease out the root ball, same process as ever, nice and gently. Roots look good. I should think this was probably only potted about a year ago, so it hasn't taken me too long to tease out the roots. Roots look good, nice and healthy. Sharp pair of scissors, a little trim back, don't need to take off too much. And into the pot. Already prepped this pot obviously, and I don't need to show you all of the details. There's plenty of videos out there to show you all of this. This is more about just my little journey with this juniper and how we ended up where we are. The pot, I wouldn't say was the perfect pot for it, but I just want to get it growing, and maybe in a year or 2 years time we'll revisit the pot situation. Make sure it's pretty much in the right position, in the right sort of, not leaning too far one way or too far the other. Work the soil in and around the root ball. And just a little bit of a tidy up now. And there we go. So that looks good. Foliage still has a long way to go now. It's it's got to that point where I've learnt over time that this is enough now. It's time to let the tree recover and let it get its roots re-established, get some vigour back, and then we can start working on tidying up those foliage pads in about next spring, next summertime, something like that. Do a bit of pinching out. Here's a close-up of the Jins and the Shari, and I work the Shari up so it kind of meanders up along the trunk, not too imposing, but just enough to give it some real character. The foliage pads, as I said, need a lot of work on them over the next few years, but I won't rush into that now. Let the tree recover, and then we'll start work on those probably next summertime. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey and enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it and you don't already subscribe, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It does help keep the channel running, and so we can make lots of other videos like this. So thanks for watching. Take care. Before you go, I would just like you to imagine that gradually over a period of years, maybe another 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever, that parts of this tree now start to die off. The bottom two branches, for instance, could start to die off and end up being ginned and end up as deadwood. And just a few wispy branches full of life that are just fluttering in the wind at the top, a bit like a flag. Or alternatively, imagine that the top had died off, being more exposed to the weather, and the top half was just ginned and sharied, and then it was just the two bottom branches that are indeed growing with the wind, a bit more sheltered down under the hill, and we can build up different pictures, each one filled with character and age.